We now wake in a world humming with tension every day. Prices climbing, storms, wars, and other disasters tearing our world apart, and our screens light up every time there's a crisis. Economic uncertainty threatens to push us over the edge any moment. Climate grief weighs on our hearts. Digital overwhelm ping pongs us from our phones to our laptops, while social isolation echoes through our lives. This mounting pressure isn't just in our heads. It accumulates as what we call allostatic load, the invisible wear and tear that chronic stress inflicts on the body and brain. And because of our built in negativity bias, our brains are drawn to doom scrolling and fear driven headlines, and the algorithms know it. Outrage and division light up our feeds, and content creators are quietly conditioned to angle their content in this light because, well, how else do you grow your following when you have AI to compete with? I get it, and I don't blame them. But the cost to all of us is that this pattern continues to amplify every shadow of our worst fears. Studies show that constant exposure to bad news correlates with higher anxiety and increased feelings of helplessness. It's as if each headline is siphoning off our joy, our focus, and even our capacity to feel compassion. And I know I'm not the first person to name this problem, nor to highlight that many seem to think the answer is to just ignore what's happening in the world, to just roll over and let the oligarchs seize control over everything. But stick with me because that is most certainly not what I am arguing. What I will present to you is a set of guidelines for approaching the paradox of modern life in a way that doesn't ignore the atrocities of the modern world and yet sets us up to focus on what really matters so we can all do our part in building a better world. What we will need is cognitive flexibility, emotional granularity, self compassion, meaning, and connectedness. Cognitive flexibility is our ability to take a step back and reframe a challenge, and inarguably one of our most important tools. We need to be able to see each crisis that we face not only as a threat, but as an opportunity to adapt. Think of it like this. If you were on a busy freeway speeding along and you could see up ahead that staying in the lane you were in meant crashing, would you change lanes or would you simply focus on complaining about the dead end? We have the ability to change lanes, even though it might not feel like it right now. Research shows that flexible thinkers recover faster from setbacks and come up with creative solutions even when under pressure. So, when thinking about our problems and our crises, we each need to focus on small intentional actions that maybe we didn't consider before. Instead of writing something off as absurd or not needed right now, well, our timeline is closing in on us. So, maybe it's time to revisit those thoughts. The skill isn't fixed, it's a muscle that you can strengthen. Now, emotional granularity is another necessary tool, and it's the ability to name precisely what you're feeling, to distinguish frustration from disappointment or dread from sadness. It helps us to avoid the trap of allowing everything to sort of get melded together in one giant amalgam of despair. Picture it as the difference between staring at a dark, vague abyss of bad vibes versus a detailed painting depicting someone struggling with deadlines or worrying about the planet's future. When we label our emotions precisely, rather than getting swept away by some vague smokescreen of feelings, we can choose targeted strategies. Strategies like reframing a worry or practicing a brief pause before we act. And just like any skill, honing your emotional vocabulary becomes easier with practice. Next, self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would treat a friend. Instead of berating yourself for feeling anxious or telling yourself you shouldn't feel overwhelmed, it allows you to acknowledge that this is hard and it's okay to struggle. Picture wrapping yourself up in a warm blanket of empathy as opposed to wrapping yourself in a cold, wet towel of self criticism. Research shows that people who practice self compassion experience lower stress and actually greater emotional resilience. Like any habit, you can cultivate it. Start by noticing your inner critic and gently redirecting that voice towards encouragement and support. We also need meaning making, which is our capacity to take the chaos of life and weave it into a coherent story, finding purpose even when the plot feels unwritten. Imagine it like sitting down with a tangled ball of yarn and patiently winding it into a beautiful tapestry. Each thread, each struggle or victory becomes part of a larger pattern. By asking ourselves, what can this experience teach me? Or how does this challenge deepen my sense of purpose? We transform random stressors into energy for growth. Like any craft, this one takes practice too. So here's what I would recommend. Start by journaling one insight, one key takeaway from each of your difficult moments, and watch how that starts to weave into a narrative of resilience. And of course, we also need connectedness. Connectedness reminds us that we don't weather storms alone. They're sort of like life jackets in rough seas. Imagine each meaningful connection that you have like a rope that can be thrown to you when the waves come crashing in. Family, friends, mentors, community groups. These bonds act as a sort of shock absorber against chronic stress. They help us to bounce back more quickly when things happen and knock us down. So, building connections is a skill set too. And what I would recommend is to start small. Start by reaching out to a group or to a person with genuine curiosity, no agenda. Just offer your presence, and you might be surprised with how much a mutual bond will naturally develop. We are burning out on increasing the speed of our lives with endless consumption and constantly competing with curated lives that never rest. Yet beneath the burnout, something curious is stirring. Across living rooms and forums, people are quietly reclaiming their time and attention. Digital minimalism is on the rise, uninstalling apps, setting screen free hours, and rediscovering real world hobbies. Slow living movements are happening, which can help us to remember to savor the little moments versus just chasing the next high. Meanwhile, a spiritual resurgence is also unfolding, not necessarily in churches, but also in mindfulness circles and simple presence practices. People are seeking grounding anchors beyond any one ideology. A ritual at sunrise, a moment of gratitude in the garden, or a little breathwork session before bed. And younger generations, having grown up amidst climate crises and economic precarity, are redefining success. They are increasingly valuing equity over ego, collective care versus individual success. They're choosing climate action, community projects, and jobs that align with their values, even if it comes along with less prestige or privilege. And these shifts are not just mere trends. They're signals that our culture is at a very significant crossroads. One that asks us, what kind of world do we want to live in when speed and consumption are no longer behind the wheel? The challenge that we face now is collective, but so is the opportunity waiting on the other side. True resilience isn't just about bouncing back as individuals, it's about bouncing forward together. Imagine neighborhoods where mental health care is woven into everyday life. Group check ins at community centers, peer led support groups at local parks, mutual aid networks, stocking pantries and offering emotional first aid. And these aren't distant utopias. These are real world experiments happening now in communal repair. Then there's ecological restoration, because planting trees isn't just about carbon capture. It's about planting our nervous systems in living soil, in watching saplings grow and deriving hope from that. Participating in a river cleanup or a shoreline restoration doesn't just heal landscapes, it heals our collective psyche. The next frontier demands that we shift from me to we. It calls us to practice shared rhythms, rituals of coming together in joy and grief, in ceremony and song. It asks us to build infrastructures of care that outlast any one singular crisis. Community gardens, carpool co ops, neighborhood time banks. When we practice regulating our nervous systems in concert through collective mindfulness, shared breath work, or even synchronized storytelling, we rediscover that our capacity for connection is our greatest weapon against despair. This is how we move from surviving to thriving, not despite the weight of the world, but because we all carry it together. Yes, the world is heavy, and there is nothing pathological about feeling it. Resilience isn't the absence of hardship or ignoring it. It's about the decision to stay soft, open and connected despite it. As we face uncertainty, remember that each act of kindness, each moment of clarity and shared breath weaves us closer together. We've named the challenges, we've learned powerful mindsets, and we've glimpsed the promise of collective repair. But the time is now, and the next step is ours to make. So let's head into the unknown with compassion, courage, and the faith that together we can weave a future that goes beyond mere surviving and is defined by true flourishing. In this way, we can leave this digital mess behind and learn what it means to be a neighbor again. I hope that you found this video helpful and that it helps you get through today and many more with clarity and purpose. I am Dr. Charles. As always, stay safe and take care of each other out there, and we'll see you in the next check-in.